What up? What up? What up? Hello and welcome everyone to this 33rd episode of the Backwards K Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Asbrock, and I am joined. I just lost my train of thought, man. My God, I was like, dude,
Hey, let me slide in and help you out there. What's going on, dude?
it's been a long day, man. I'm fried mentally, as you can tell.
You'll have that, but hey,
Shit.
how's it going otherwise? You
Well,
good?
that guy right there is Scott Kaiser. He's my co-host tonight.
Hi, everybody. We're
My
here to
God.
talk some ball if we can get Chris straightened out.
Not a chance, dude. I am not. It's yeah, I'm a lost cause today. But you know what? I'm gonna fight through it because that's what we do.
Good stuff. Let's
Yeah.
get started here. Scotty saying hi in the comments, asking us if we've been watching any of the WBC qualifiers. This one last weekend were fun. I have been following them. I haven't seen any of the games televised. I watched highlights
Yeah, same here.
and seen the updates and whatnot, but I have not been able to see. But it seems like they've been going. Getting excited for next year's WBC. We were talking about it in our off the show chat about how we better have full representation there on the U.S. side going into next year if we're going to reclaim that title.
Man, it's crazy that they're already talking about WBC qualifiers, man. It's like it's right around the corner. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I can't wait. That's one of my favorite events. I'm one that like. Are you a big like international competition like in any sport? I am. I love
for
it.
sure. Yeah, anytime U.S. goes up against any other country for anything, I'm bathed in the flag.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
yeah, and baseball needed something like this since they're not a featured piece in the Olympics, and this showcases all the premier talent from the league. So I'm glad that baseball did it. I know there are a lot of people who don't like that it's during spring training and don't like that it pulls guys away and whatnot, but it's once every 4 years, and the players themselves always seem very enthused by it. The United States generally does have quite a bit of people that are interested in going, but a lot of times it's the teams who pull back on these guys getting in there.
Yeah.
But the rest of the countries don't hold back, and they are very enthusiastic about not only being there but winning, and
It's
that's
awesome.
I was gonna say that's what makes it exciting, is the fact that every game feels like a playoff game. So
that's why I sent you that post. Was that a couple days ago through Instagram, like of the Dominican, like what their team would look like. My God,
yeah.
man, like it's insanity. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
well, and I mean, sometimes or somehow Japan always finds themselves, in the final four or the end. But when you look at it outside, and we're more familiar with the names now as they,
because they're all Dodgers,
right? Because they import more. But before it was like, oh, hey, here's this, Japanese team, and there'd be like one or two guys that you kind of heard of that were, rumored to coming over soon, and so it was like, your only way to kind of see a firsthand look at them. And now it's like, well, Japan has A, B, C, and D, and we know them to be, ready, capable major league talent.
yeah.
So I'm excited for it, and my excitement will amp up much more come the off season, because it shortens the off season. That's another good thing about it, is it's like, may not like the timing of it for some folks, but it's great for me because we get baseball that counts before the season. It's like an appetizer.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. It's really nice, in fact.
Speaking of kind of nice, we're moving along in our division previews, and we've come to a division that isn't exactly nice when it comes to trying to break it down and figure out who's going to win, because we have three teams at the top that are stronger than the other two. But we are talking today about the American League West and breaking it all down. We will start first out in Sacramento, question mark? No longer the Oakland Athletics. The former team that suited up in Oakland will now call Sacramento their home for the year, but they will be known as just the Athletics, no city affiliation. They'll be in the minor league park. What can you say about the A's? It's been tumultuous for the past few years. They You know, they've struggled to put a competitive team on the field. They have flashes. They have young players that are interesting as far as being able to win games if they could keep any of them and or put them out on the field more consistently. But it's a franchise that struggles because of ownership. Ownership doesn't want to spend. Billy Beane's still rocking the long gone Moneyball philosophy. But outside of Brent Rooker and a couple of other guys, there's not too many household names. They're a fun team, though, a young team. And again, if they could just get some consistency when it comes to player retention and bringing guys in, I think that the A's could get back to competing at a level that's worthy enough to get them in the playoffs. But what are your thoughts on the A's as we move into the 2025 season there, Chris?
A team that finished 69-93 last year. They were 19 and a half games back. I mean, Oakland at that time was what?
I'm just laughing because it's just it's like there's you struggle to find words for them because it's like they've got players, but are they really committed to the team in general? Like the ownership, it's all.
I think they half-ass it more than any franchise out there. Like they've got, like you said, they've got talent. Like there's plenty of talent on that roster, but they never go fully involved in it. And there's some times to where outside of the Astros, that's a winnable division. Now we have seen other teams, step up, but the Mariners have been down. The Rangers were down last year. The Angels have sucked continuously for the last couple of years. So
better part of the last decade.
Well, I was trying to be nice, but they can't. They're just one of those teams where, again, you don't know where ownership is. And obviously they don't care because, I felt so bad for A's fans because, my God, they've had that team ripped out from underneath them. And I mean, it's just, it sucks. But then you see they go out there and then they spend a bunch of money on Luis Severino, which we talked about on a 3-year deal that we were kind of cracking up about. Like, where did this come from? They bring in, Gio Urshela. They bring in Jose Leclerc. Luis Urias. I mean, so they bring in these guys. I mean, they got to spend, this money, but it's, there's just so much more that has to be done. I don't know. I mean, then you're playing in a minor league ballpark. It just, there's such a gong show right from the get-go. And it's, I don't really know how to forecast their 2025 because it seems like it should be, it shouldn't be as bad as it was last year. I mean, granted, they were, 19 and a half games back, but, they didn't have many expectations last year. I mean, they haven't had, the expectations for the last couple of years. So,
yeah, I mean, they also brought in Jeffrey Springs. They've got Lawrence Butler and Shea Langoliers, and obviously I mentioned Brent Rooker. Yeah. They do have some pieces, but you mentioned the Luis Severino signing, and that goes back to ownership. It's like after we kind of chuckled about it, left. It's like then all the reports came out that basically Oakland or non-Oakland. I don't know how many times is going to do that this episode, but basically the A's franchise were forced to spend the money because the Players Association was going to file a grievance because they'd have to, allocate a certain amount towards payroll, and they've been under that threshold. And after a certain amount of time, if the players file a grievance, and they have to spend it anyway. So them spending money wasn't because they had to; it was more out of necessity, so that they didn't get dinged from sitting on it. So it's sad because this franchise is a proud franchise, very historical, has the titles to back it up. During the 70s, the A's were a powerhouse. It is a franchise that is very near and dear to me personally because my late grandfather was a huge A's fan. He would be absolutely disgusted to see that they moved out of Oakland. In fact, the first ever Major League Baseball game that I went to was at the Coliseum.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah, so I have a vested interest in this franchise doing well, and it sucks to see that they're going to be playing their games in a minor league ballpark because ownership refused to do what needed to be done to one, put a competitive team on the field year in and year out, which they should be able to accomplish, and two, get the stadium deal done with the city of Oakland. And the city of Oakland shares some of the blame.
Yeah.
After years and years of going back and forth and ownership, steadfast in their not spending money ways, I put a lot of the blame on them. And so,
Yes.
it's going to be a rough year for A's fans. I imagine that it'll be a rough year on the field, but I mean, I don't expect them to bottom out. Like, I mean,
I don't either. Yeah.
I think that they'll be like watchable. Like, again, they've got talented players. They've got. I think they're.
It's not a White Sox situation.
Yes, it's definitely not a White Sox situation where they're just a minor league team, a glorified minor league team with a bunch of guys that are on the way. They have guys that have proven stuff, and they've got some younger guys that are making their way and have a lot of promise. I think their pitching is what is going to hold them back mostly this season. They just don't have enough guys to prevent runs. But I don't think scoring runs will be a problem. If you look last year, the A's were one of those weird teams that they won a bunch of games scoring double-digit runs. And if I remember correctly, they were tied for like the most games in double digits, but that coming, those being all of the runs that they would score in like a week's time, because most games, they struggled to score runs, but they had multiple games where they scored, 11, 12 runs and, managed to win those games. But it's going to take a whole lot more of that if the A's are going to be competitive this year in any meaningful way. But I do look forward to seeing how this team grows and seeing how they handle not having really a home park. I mean, they're going to essentially play an entire season of away games. And the only thing that there will be to watch for most of the games or must-see TV is Mason Miller.
I was just going to say, we didn't mention him.
Mason Miller, I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers at the beginning of last year when he became the full-time closer and they were breaking into coverage to show Mason Miller's, the end of games, him coming out and just blowing the side away, spitting 100-mile-an-hour gas. The only problem Mason Miller is that he's got to stay healthy, which he was converted from a starter to a reliever / closer because he couldn't stay healthy. And as fun as he is to watch, you just have to hope that his arm can hold up to it, because it's, it hasn't. They do a lot to massage it last year. Didn't let him pitch on back-to-back days very often. They never let him go more than the one inning. And really, I mean, he really didn't face more than 4 or 5 batters at a time unless he got into a jam. So he's exciting to watch. Like I said, Lawrence Butler is young and up and coming, and Brent Rooker is a star in his own right, although most people, overlook the DH position, and he's not a household name. He is a very good player, and they do have some juice there. Just need things to go their way this season. But I'd imagine that for the A's, it'll be another finish just ahead of the Angels as well.
I mean, I was going through their depth chart, man. I'm like, you got Shea Langoliers, catcher.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got guys.
I like Tyler Strodom over at first base. He's good. He's struggled with injuries, but he's up and coming. Jacob
Wilson is prospect, that's going to be, I think is going to be a star in this league.
The son of former Pirate.
Yes. Yes. You got JJ Bleday, like you had mentioned, Lawrence Butler, Brent Rooker, Esteury Ruiz. There's talent on this roster. And I just, again, like we said, it's not a White Sox situation. They're not going to be, losing 120, 140 games, but, they're not going to be overly competitive in this division, but it's not going to be, you're going to still want to check them out every now and then. Like you said, they're still very watchable. And
Mark Kotze gets those guys to play hard. Mark Kotze
is awesome.
A plus baseballer in his heyday.
Yes.
Just one of those guys who, not the most talented, but always gave his best, and that's what he expects of his team. And really, I mean, that's what we saw out of the A's last year, despite the fact that, they lost a bunch of games. Again, they were competitive, and if they can get some health and maybe find if the Jeffrey Springs thing works out for them, they could challenge for third place in division. I'm not going to go crazy and say that they're going to do anything nuts outside of that, but depending on how things go in this division, I would be concerned for the third place finisher because they might be closer to the A's than they anticipate.
I was going to say, it would say more about them as opposed to
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
with you.
But moving along so that we can keep this thing going, we will move on to the Angels, another team that kind of rudderless. They still have Mike Trout. Obviously, they brought in, excuse me. They brought in the Braves' former catcher, Travis d'Arnaud, as one of I believe he was the very first move of the offseason. It was the first transaction. And, they also ended up bringing in freaking Jorge Soler later on through a trade as well. So former Braves taking over Atlanta, going up there and working with Ron Washington, also the former third base coach in Atlanta. Not a whole lot of excitement for this team either. Gone is Shohei after signing with the Dodgers a year ago. Mike Trout is another year older, another year banged up. It's unfortunate because one of the best talents the game has ever seen. But at this point, we're just praying for him to stay healthy for the majority of the season. He will be moving to right field. They announced earlier this offseason, that he will no longer be patrolling center field. He's going to give that up and move to right in an attempt to keep him healthier. I don't know how well that will work, but we'll see. Again, they too have some younger talent. Zach Neto is an up-and-coming star, but he's going to start the season injured. Had shoulder surgery in the offseason. Logan O'Hoppe is a promising young catcher that they need to get going. But when he's been healthy, he's got a promising big bat. And then Nolan Schanuel over at first base. Not a lot of power, but he's a solid first baseman nonetheless. I mean, the Angels are a team that I struggle to ever know what to do with, not because they've been mismanaged, because Artie Moreno has tried to throw money at things. He's tried to, make moves. It just seems like there's no direction for the Angels for the most part. Like they make what seems to be a decent baseball smart move or whatever, and then double down and compound an issue by making two or three other moves that are just giant head scratchers. So
yeah,
I think the A's are the bottom of this division, or the Angels are the bottom of this division, running away from me.
They are the ultimate throw everything at the wall and see what sticks team. It's like every single year. I mean, in going through and checking out the, some of the transactions that were made, they kicked it off, brought in Kyle Hendricks, Travis d'Arnaud, Kevin Newman, and Yusei Kikuchi. That was all right at the beginning of
I forgot.
Not really. Yeah, I mean, that was all throughout November. So you're like, okay, there's, we see, I guess, maybe a direction here. And then it was kind of a lull all the way through, and then to where they bring in Tim Anderson on a minor league deal.
God, I forgot they brought in Tim Anderson.
Yeah. And then Yohan Moncada just agreed to a deal a couple weeks ago. And then Kenley Jansen, but he's 37 years old. They brought in both those guys on one-year deals. So it's really the They're a weird team, man. They really are. I love Yusei Kikuchi, and I think I said it right at the beginning during one of our podcasts during the hot stove. I think Yusei Kikuchi, there's so much talent with him, but he's going to be your ace. I don't know about that. And that's where, again, I love him, but man,
just saying that, Kikuchi and ace, he's very far, he's very solid pitcher.
Oh, he's a great,
very far from being an ace.
Yeah. He's not your number one. I mean, in looking at the depth chart, you got Kikuchi, Tyler Anderson, Jose Soriano, Kyle Hendricks, and Reed Detmers are really your 1 through 5. Now, bullpen wise, Kenley Jansen, your closer, Ben Joyce, the absolute flamethrower. You got Brock Burke. There's guys. Sam Bachman, the Miami University product, he could pump it up there. Robert Stevenson is, he's there, but he's on the IL.
Well, and that's one of the, I was going to bring it up when you said the bullpen. I'm like, and people forget that last year they signed Robert Stevenson, who was a highly sought after free agent back end of the bullpen piece, who promptly had Tommy John right after, or maybe it was the brace features, but either way, was injured immediately after they signed him last year. Didn't throw a single pitch for him. And that's just emblematic of the problems that the Angels have. It's like, they're like the drunk guy at the bar. They just make decisions just impulsively. Nothing seems to like connect or make sense. It's like, hey, we just need to put together a baseball team. It's like putting together a baseball team with your buddies. You're just like, we just need bodies, right? Like, we'll get this guy. Oh, this guy used to play, and we'll get this guy. All right, cool. We've got 26 guys. Now let's see what happens. They are very aggressive when calling up their minor leaguers. I mean, Zach Neto spent about 10 minutes down in the minors after getting drafted. They've pushed on some guys, to get them up there quickly. But I think the real problem for the Angels at the current time is they just got a lot of dead money. You got Anthony Rendon over there, who's just been
bring him up, man.
Giant albatross since he signed from Washington, hasn't stayed healthy, has seemed disinterested in everything baseball related, even when he has been healthy. It's like he got the bag and checked out.
Oh, 1,000%.
And then there's Trout, who, every baseball fan loves him, but he just, best ability is availability. And Trout has been unavailable for a lot of the last 3 to 4 years when it comes to just, being available to play. Again, unfortunate that his body has started to break down, but it's very reminiscent of Junior. I mean, Junior started off his career, beacon of health, tearing it up, Hall of Fame track, and then the middle part of his career happened, and all of a sudden couldn't stay healthy. Now there's hope because, Junior was able to get through some of the latter part of his career, healthier than he had been during those years with the Reds, but very similar career trajectory. And I'm just hoping that, Trout can finish out his playing career strong, because I believe he's still got like 5 years left on the 10-year deal that he signed a while back. So
God,
it's going to be another rough year in Los Angeles, but hey, they'll have players.
But this is another situation where they've got talent on this team, man, and I don't understand why they continue to suck each and every year. Now, granted, I think for them, it's a bunch of ill-fitting parts. Like I said, it's like, oh, hey, we'll trade for this guy. We'll trade for that guy. Yeah.
We'll sign this guy. We'll sign that guy. And there's no cohesive plan. There's no, like if most organizations have an identity or a philosophy or something they do, the Angels are literally like, we'll just sign every free agent there is and see what happens.
Just to plug holes and then just throw them out there, and it's never.
Even thinking about the Ohtani and Rendon things, it's like they had Trout, and you kind of had Trout and just kind of an established base. They throw the money at Ohtani, okay, and that didn't work as far as the results on the field goes, even though Ohtani was great. And then you throw money at Rendon, like and now they're trying to develop their own players. But they're even doing that in a way that's kind of head-scratching, because they draft them and then again, they're 5 minutes up. Like, And I know that minor leaguers and guys that get drafted these days spend less time in the minors than they did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But you got to let them season a little bit. There's nothing wrong with these guys, spending 3 or 4 months after they get drafted in the minor leagues.
Yeah, it's
you
okay.
want to call them up, right? You want to call them up for a cup of coffee in September, fine. But bringing them up 2 months after they get drafted and throwing them into the starting lineup day one, I don't know. It just seems a little irresponsible for a team that isn't going anywhere and needs to develop the players. You throw guys in there too soon, it kills their confidence, and then you never know, how good of a player they can be, and it might not happen for you because their confidence gets shot. So,
yeah, it's amazing that just to say a team that led by Trout, Ohtani, and Anthony Rendon, never made the playoffs. How the hell? I mean, it is.
But and that goes to show you how poorly run the organization is, because having those 3 players, you accidentally back into a playoff.
Yeah, you should fall into 83 to 87 wins every single year just by just showing up, and they didn't, and that's just the maddening part of it, man. If I were an Angels fan, I would just be unbelievably upset. I mean, it's maddening.
The Weaver brothers would never.
That's true. That is very true. God, man, remember the Weavers, man?
I just started thinking about that. I was like, when they were good, I'm like, oh man, that's right. They had Jeff and Jared Weaver, and those two were.
Jared Weaver was freaking nasty.
He was awesome.
He was so nasty.
But that's it seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
That they, and then that, again, pitching is what is going to, carry you when the offense disappears. And if you don't have pitching, you make it very hard on yourself because you can't outslug every game.
And they never addressed it. And that is
right.
1,000% on the front office and ownership. They never addressed it once. And that inexcusable. Inexcusable.
And then, again, it's like Kikuchi is nice, but what you're paying him to be, your number one, when you don't have anything else, it's like, it's kind of a waste. Like, it's, he's not going to pitch to the level that's needed to actually win. They don't have anything in the minors that, knocking on the door as far as starting pitching. So it's just like, this is a 2 or 3 year Band-Aid with Kikuchi, or you're hoping he retains enough value that you can flip him at a deadline here in a year or two. I don't even know.
One thing, there was a couple rumors over the offseason that Taylor Ward was one of the names that had been brought up as a match with the Reds, and I'm all for it. I mean, at that point, I was like, count me in. There's a nice right-handed, outfielder with some pop. So, and one guy that I would have, or I don't know necessarily they would ask for him, but Nick Lodolo would be a guy that, as the Reds, I would deal him out. I mean, he's pitching right now, and he got shelled, gave up home runs on the first 2 batters he faced.
Oh no!
But when he's on, like, his stuff is probably the nastiest stuff, hands down, in the Reds rotation. Like, Nick Lodolo is a nasty pitcher, but he's one that he can't seem to stay healthy. But it's like, you wonder if a change of scenery for him might be a good situation. Head out west and be a solid piece to, that rotation. That might be, that might have been a good matchup. Now you're going to have to throw another piece or two for the Reds, to send out west. But, I'm just stunned that, the way they approach free agency and the pitching, it's baseball malpractice. I mean, it really is, because, again, we said the Kikuchi deal was, okay, great. That's a great start. Okay, now go out there and get your ace. Well, they didn't. That was your ace. Well, that's not an ace. Like, he was phenomenal when he was in Toronto. Cool. But no, he's a great number 3 or 4. So you can't be, you can't sit there and really hook your wagon onto Yusei Kikuchi being your number one starter and expect to have, a solid year. I just don't see it. They just, again, they continue to throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and roll with it from there. And it's a recipe for disaster, and it has been, for like I said, the last couple of years. Like I said, I was trying to be nice, but Scott, you dished out the reality of it for a decade plus, and that's the sad part.
Well, and I was sitting there thinking about it just now. This time last winter, Artie Moreno had put the team up for sale.
Oh, that's right.
And then he randomly just pulled it back. And here we are a year later, like those rumblings kind of died out, but I'm just not thinking about it. What changed? Where are we at with that? Because, that again, another example of how this franchise and organization is just kind of all over the place. Like there's no direction. There's no plan. None. It's kind of just wake up and go with the flow. And I will, Artie's been a good owner from the standpoint of willingness to spend money, but he hasn't been a good owner because he's interjected himself on some of the decisions that would make a good GM be able to do the damn job. Like he's more interested in making sure there are butts in the seats, which is admirable, than actually putting a good team on the field.
But what happens when you put a good team on the field? The butts go in the seats.
You get more butts in the seats. It's so weird. It's so weird when owners, they make millions and millions of dollars on their on things that they do to become an owner in sports, and then want to go cheap on that asset when knowing as businessmen that like when you do this, when you put something into the product, you get more out of it. Like I'll never understand how they buy these teams and then just run it into the ground. Very weird.
I mean, you and I talk about it all the time. Like, if we just give us a franchise to run, and I guarantee we'll be in the playoffs. Yeah, I guarantee if we were running the Los Angeles Angels, and if we had Artie Moreno willing to spend the money like he does and just not interject himself into decisions, I guarantee we're in the playoffs each year. Guaranteed. It's
at least competing for it. Like the fact that they're just never even in the conversation playing in Los Angeles is
if we stay healthy, we're in the playoffs.
Right. Yeah.
If we stay healthy.
But I mean, I'm just sitting there thinking in general about the market. I mean, you look at the Dodgers, and the Dodgers have all this money pouring on the year. You're in Los Angeles now. It's Anaheim, it's whatever, but it is still a place where money's coming into. There's no reason. None at all that they should struggle to put a competitive team out on the field. But again, when you mismanage your funds and mismanage your talent acquisition, and this is the outcome.
I mean, I just think of myself like if I were an owner, I'm going all in, man. Like I'm gonna Steve Cohen this shit. I'm gonna bring in but I'm gonna bring in a guy who, one of the top baseball GMs there is. Run this for me. This is what you've got. Work with it. And let's do this, man. It's not. It's all going to pay off in the end. Like that's what I just don't get.
Yeah, Scott pointing out that the only person in baseball that likes baseball less than Rendon is Rob Manfred. Boom, nailed it.
Can't argue that one. Yeah. Can't argue that
one. To put a bow on that and just to rev back around to Rendon. Rendon is out for the foreseeable future from having surgery, and the announced timetable was just for some time.
When you get that for some time, that's a problem.
They didn't even put an actual window on it. He's going to be hurt for some time.
They've got him down here.
Do not worry about him.
They got him down on the 60-day IL is what it's listed on the depth chart, which could obviously change each and every.
Anthony Rendon is going to buy cigarettes. He'll be back.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
All righty. Well, moving forward to the teams that are actually going to be
competent
in the conversation and compete. We move over to what has been the cream of the crop and the crown jewel of the AL West, but maybe, just maybe, their window and their time is coming to a close. That's the Houston Astros. Chinks in their armor starting to show. Last year they did make the playoffs, but did not make the ALCS like they had done for many years in a row, and obviously did not make the World Series, which is another thing that we had come accustomed to. Gone is Kyle Tucker, who ended up in Chicago, along with Ryan Presley, 2 separate trades, but they are both in Chicago. Alex Bregman and left as a free agent, now in Boston. Verlander's out of the picture. He's in San Francisco. And yeah, what's left is a Houston team that's on paper still looks like a good bet to compete, still looks like a good bet to possibly win the division, but just in general, not the same Astros, just not that same aura about them going into this season that they've had. And maybe that's just because they lost in the playoffs and they seemed vulnerable. And there were times last year that they looked like the old Astros, but they struggled a lot to start the season. They had to play pretty good baseball down the stretch in the back half of the year to keep up the playoff appearances alive. But if they're going to make it back and get back to the season, they're going to need a lot more out of Yordan Alvarez and company. And I don't know. This team, I think it feels like they're in a little bit of a transition period, and they're kind of like, this is that fork in the road moment. Like if they can get over, like they still have enough talent to win, but the margin of error is much smaller. Like they don't have the embarrassment of riches. Guys are getting older. Some of the pitching staff struggled to stay healthy on the back end. With Verlander gone, they don't have to necessarily worry about age, but at this point they're looking just to they've got some younger guys, Spencer Arrighetti and Hunter Brown.
I love Arrighetti.
Yeah. And they look to be promising young arms, but again, the Astros are going to have to play better ball than they have over this run to make sure they keep the same level of success. Your thoughts on the Astros as we head into this season?
You hit the nail right on the head when you said they are at the pinnacle fork in the road for them, and they lost a lot more than they brought in. Christian Walker was your only big addition, and free agent wise, man, this team they were 88-73 last year. They finished 3.5 games ahead of the Mariners. Wow. I mean, this is an interesting time for the Houston Astros in going through, their depth chart again. And I love looking at this because it's very interesting to see like where a team is compared to, you had mentioned the names that, that were gone, but Framber Valdez obviously is their guy. Verlander, like you said, is gone. Kikuchi is gone. So now you're relying on Hunter Brown, Ronel Blanco, Spencer Arrighetti, who I said I love Arrighetti, Hayden Wisniewski, I'm sorry. Just to name a couple. Lance McCullers is older.
Still hurt.
Yeah, still.
That's what he stays doing.
Yeah, he's older, can't stay healthy, but when he's pitching, he's solid. You still got Christian Javier, JP France, are a couple of other names.
To say Javier and Luis Garcia, both on the shelf.
Luis Garcia went over him. Yeah,
both on the year on the shelf to start the year. And last I heard about Javier won't be back until about July, and I think Luis Garcia is looking at maybe a June at best return. But yeah, I mean
there's no injury designations for either one of them, which is interesting. So I don't know.
No, they probably just haven't hit the transaction on it yet. They probably
they don't really need to. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's and looking at the infield. I mean, catcher you got Yainer Diaz, Christian Walker. Gold Glove first base. Potential there. Mauricio Dubon is they've got him listed at second base because they've got Altuve out in right field. Isaac Paredes, third base. Jeremy Pena, the Maine Black Bear, shortstop. No, they got Altuve in left field. I'm sorry. Jake Myers in center and Chas McCormick in right. That's your starters there.
A little bit of like I said, changing of the guard.
It is
where they're kind of like straddling the line. Like I think this might be the last gasp of this championship core. Like this group that they've had there for a while, and losing Bregman and and Tucker are huge blows to the offense.
That's what I mean. The Tucker one was interesting because I thought, there was I get the thought behind it because they were not going to be able to re-sign him.
Yes, long term.
So I get it. I totally understand. But the Bregman one, I mean, they had it lined up for him, and I was kind of surprised he did not go back. I mean, I thought originally he was going to Detroit, but
yeah, I actually think that that's kind of like what we talked about last week, where this is going to be a situation where the Astros aren't going to exactly regret it later on.
No, they're not. I think he saw the writing on the wall,
yeah.
Which is exactly like, they're at this point, and this is one of those situations to where I see, let's go out and see how this, the first half of the season goes, and then we address that at the trade deadline. Because then you can deal some of these pieces and really start to, really change the guard per se. And I think that's where
if they've struggled or if they've taken a step, they can get a head start on the rebuild.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I would imagine that would be the move. Like outside of Jordan and probably just Jordan and Altuve, I would imagine that everyone else is on the chopping block at that point. If you find yourself in the hole, Scotty pointing out that they did bring in Isaac Paredes to replace Bregman. That was the trade with Tucker and the Cubs, and I mean Paredes is going to be all right, and I don't think he's that much of a downgrade. Just like I was saying, I do think that the Astros won't necessarily regret the Bregman deal long term because I don't know that Bregman was aging all that gracefully, and I think the back end of that deal is what's going to be the rougher part. But to the Astros' credit, they didn't budge on how much they were willing to pay. They had that number to start the offseason and they negotiated through the first of the offseason, and it looked like Bregman was all but certainly not going to go back there. And there was kind of a window that opened up where I was like, hey, I'm not really against going back there, and I'll do this. And the Astros even, when they traded Presley, it was to free up more money, and it looked like, Bregman was going to end up back there. Didn't end up happening.
All for naught, yeah.
Right. And like I said, I don't, in the short term, it's a pretty big blow. Still great with the glove is Bregman. Paredes not as such, but hitting wise, it's not going to be a huge drop off. But just in general, again, when you lose a founding, cornerstone piece of your championship core, it's not easy to replace, and it's tough to see them, replicating the same amount of success. Not that they can't, but it'll just be different this way. And as Mike's pointing out that it seems like the rest of the American League is caught up to the Astros, and it's tough to maintain that level of success for an extended period. And yeah, it is, because if I remember correctly, just vaguely remembering the timeline, I mean, like this rebuild / window started all the way back in 2005. That was when Carlos Correa was drafted, and they already had Altuve, and that's when things got going. So I mean, you're looking like a 20-year period where they've between the first few years of that where they were actually like rebuilding, and then you go into it. It's like 10 to 15 years. I think that coming from a Braves fan who saw the long run of success, it all eventually comes to an end. The guys age out, money changes, the times changes, everything, and it all runs come to an end. But, it is tough to accept if you're an Astros fan. I'm sure that many Astros fans are thinking like, only one or two things have to go right. But like I said, I do think they're still a very good team. And on paper, they should be able to contend for this division. But things can go wrong in a hurry. And the windows, they do abruptly close shut sometimes, and I could see that potentially happening with the Astros. I don't expect it to, but I could see it.
I think it'll be much more of a harsh reality this year than what you think. I really do. I'm thinking third place in the division, man. Like that's. They lost too much, and man, I don't want to say, it's hard to bet against them because I bet against them last year and look what happened. They continue to prove you wrong, but they had a hell of a lot more talent last year than they have going into 2025 right now. I just think the time has come, and I think that window is going to be slam shut. I really do, despite the talent that they have. But I think by the time, like I said, that they realize it coming in here to the mid part of the season, then you could start dealing some of these pieces, start bringing other pieces in, and really start to get this, changing into, a 2026, 2027 and beyond, another run, because they can do it. It's just a matter of starting to get everything shifted around.
Well, and former assistant GM in Atlanta, Dana Brown, is their GM. I do think that he's a very good scout for Atlanta and did very good things this time. And I think that Astros rebuild or retooling or whatever that looks like when Dana Brown really has to get in there and start moving things around, I do think that the turnaround won't take that much time, because I think he's great eye for talent. I think that he was very smart in the negotiations for Bregman. And like I said, short term loss, big loss. Long term, though, I think it was the right decision for both him and the organization. Honestly, like if they weren't going to meet your number and you felt like you were worth something more, then you have every right to go explore other opportunities and end up in a situation that you feels like better. But as the organization also needs to do what's best for themselves, and for the next 7 years, being locked into an Alex Bregman wasn't necessarily the right move. I'm not willing to necessarily give up on this core just yet. I want to talk through the other two teams in this division, but as we talk through those other two teams, I think it's going to clue you in the why I'm not exactly out all the way on the Astros yet, because I don't know if I trust the other two all that much. Especially the next team, Seattle.
No,
we keep saying it. I don't know what to think, don't know what to say. And this is another head-scratching team, not just in this division, but in baseball. Look, the Mariners are a franchise that has won before. The early 2000s, 2001, they set the single-season record for wins in a season, blew the doors off. The Ichiro years, the Griffey years. They've put together some really good teams. They currently have put together a really good pitching staff and a very okay offense. And I don't know what to think of this, because you want to hear their off-season additions? That's it. That's it. The Mariners did nothing this offseason.
They brought in Donovan Solano.
Yeah,
37-year-old Donovan Solano.
Yeah, and then this is
don't be so negative, Scott.
Yeah, well, and this is a team though that that their GM, we know he likes to make moves, likes to sometimes
Trader Jerry, baby.
Yeah, Jerry DePoto likes to make trades sometimes just for the sake of making trades. He's sometimes you wonder if he makes too many trades. But it's exciting, and you can see the idea and the vision behind it. And they've tried a few things the last couple of years to get some hitters and to get some offense and to get the ball rolling on that side so they could be a more complete team. But it just hasn't quite happened. And I don't know about you, but there's been a lot of talk this offseason in the last kind of year, because I never heard about it until the last year. I feel like that it's a tough place to play in Seattle for hitters.
1,000%. Yeah, it's hard as hell to hit there.
The batter's eye and the way that the ball is seen, it's more of a pitcher's park. But I never got that perception before. Like I said, they used to blow the doors off, offensively there, and nobody ever seemed to complain. I don't know what's changed. I don't know how you fix it. But Teoscar Hernandez, when he left for the Dodgers last year, said, he struggled to see the ball well in Atlanta. His home road split suggested that. You can look at other guys that have shown, their numbers in Seattle are not quite the same as other places. And so for whatever reason, it's become this pitcher's park that hitters can't hit at. But I don't know how you fix that if you're Seattle. Like they've tried multiple different things. They traded for Randy Arozarena at the deadline last year, so he'll be playing a full season presumably this year. Maybe that helps a little. They still have Cal Raleigh who hits moonshots there, a catcher,
big dumper.
But I mean, a lot depends on Julio Rodriguez, who has started off really slow, and last year was even slower than the year before. He didn't really get going until about July. They need a lot more from him. But again, if it's something about hitting there, I don't know how you fix it overall. Like, it's just an inherent problem with the ballpark, I guess. I'm kind of at a loss of words to suggest anything or understand where they go next with their offense. Or maybe they just become one of those teams that knows that their offense is going to be so low, so they just continue to just hammer on the pitching and defense side and hope for the best.
In the American League.
Yeah, I mean they currently have it. Their starters are better than just about anybody else in the league.
I mean, they've got 6 dudes that are absolute studs. And me, we've talked about numerous times, dude. I am high as hell on the Seattle Mariners. I freaking love this team.
I would like to be higher.
I am. I'm high as hell on them. I mean, you got to. And I've pumped their tires every single chance I get on this show when I talk about them. Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, and Emerson Hancock. There's your 6 right there. Again, best pitching staff in the American League. Andres Munoz, you've got Taylor Salcedo, Gregory Santos, Gabe Spire, Casey Legumina, the former Red, came over, and Matt Brash, just some names in the bullpen.
Oh, I love Matt Brash. He's back healthy this year.
Dude, if he's on, he is nasty. But he's, again, health-wise, he's got to stay healthy. Cal Raleigh, Mitch Garver as your catchers. Luke Raley, Donovan Solano are your first baseman. Dylan Moore. Now, this is where the first and second are position-wise that they do lack a little bit. Second base, Dylan Moore, Leo Rivas, Miles Mastrobuoni, and Donovan Solano. Jorge Polanco is your third baseman, and J.P. Crawford at shortstop. Outfield, Randy Arozarena, Julio Rodriguez, and Victor Robles. I think that is, that's pretty solid in the outfield. And I can't imagine, I refuse to believe that Julio Rodriguez is going to suck again in 2025. Like, it has to click. I mean, I'm betting hardcore on this dude because I freaking love Julio. And I think, there's so much talent there with him. It's going to click. Damn it, I feel it, man. I feel, and if it does, this Mariners team is going to be nasty because, again, they've got that chance with that pitching staff. Again, just score, win games 3-2 or 2-1. I don't care. Just win, baby. That's what it comes down to. And, there was talk this whole offseason of Luis Castillo being dealt. That's a distinct possibility. Depending on what he looks like, to start off, that might be a solid deadline deal to where you're bringing in a huge bat to help propel this team into October. I mean, and we know, like we said, Jerry Dipoto, that dude trades, man. He trades. This might be a situation where you're going to see that. But I see this team being – I see them being successful in 2025. They're my pick to win the AL West.
Calling your shot now, huh?
I am. I'm calling them, man. I guess I'm right on them, man. I do. I freaking love them. Them and the Rangers are the 2 teams I love in the American League, man. And I just think it has to click for them. It really, truly does. I just, there's so much talent. And again, with a pitching staff like that, it's going to happen. I'm calling it, damn it.
Well, I'm not ready to call my shot just yet because there's one last team that we need to discuss in the West before we get that far, and that being the 2023 World Series champions, that being the Texas Rangers. Coming off that World Series, a little bit of a hangover last year. Injuries derailed them for the most part. To the pitching staff was decimated. Josh Jung missed a good part of the season. They're starting third baseman, and then Corey Seager, did Corey Seager things and was hurt off and on. Had a sports hernia bothering him all year. That's just, but the offense is still there. And the pitching should be healthy. Jacob deGrom will be back this year. He's, they announced today that he's going to start on the back end of the rotation, so they're going to take the pressure off in there. You've got Wyatt Langford, another year older, and getting into his second full season after showing out last year in spring training and having a very solid year one. They added Jake Burger that they added. They traded from the Marlins. He's another huge bat. So offensively, they should be good. Again, it's all going to depend on how well the pitching staff can hold up and if those guys can stay healthy, because they no longer have Max Scherzer. He's gone. But they've got a couple of younger guys. But having Jacob deGrom in there and Nathan Eovaldi, those are two guys who struggle to stay healthy. But if they do, then I like the Rangers' chances a lot.
Well, I picked the Mariners to win the division. Now, I told you I like the Rangers as well. I can see they are my 1B. I think this is a division to where, to me, it comes down to the Rangers or Mariners. Now, in looking at the Rangers, like the rotation, Nathan Eovaldi, huge for him to re-sign back in Texas. He was one of the top free agent pitchers out there. Now, granted, it wasn't a heavy free agent market for pitching, but Eovaldi was one of the top names out there, and he re-signed. So that's huge. Jacob deGrom, like you had mentioned, is going to be shifted to the back end, take that pressure off him. Tyler Mahle, that's a name who, when he signed, he was hurt. Tyler Mahle, a healthy Tyler Mahle for a full season, count me in. You got John Gray, Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter. They've got some dudes, and that is, for them, health is what it comes down to with the Texas Rangers and their rotation. If they stay healthy, they're going to compete each and every game because of that offense. I mean, just going through, man. I mean, Jonah Heim at catcher, Jake Burger, like you had mentioned. They brought in Jock Peterson, Ezekiel Duran. They've got Marcus Semien, Josh Jung, Corey Seager, is another name. Evan Carter, Wyatt Langford, Leody Tavares, and Adolis Garcia. That's a who's who of just studs. And we saw that when that team got hot, it carried them to a World Series title. Same thing can happen this year. They've got so much talent on this team. It comes down to the health of their pitching staff for me. And that's where I give the slight advantage to Seattle. But again, it would not surprise me if we see Texas right back in it in first place, winning this division and rolling towards October, and hopefully another American League pennant. But this is a dangerous team, man, a dangerous team. They're going to be one that, and I'm one that I love watching them too. I love the ballpark. Ballpark's amazing. It's just fun watching games, watching them play each and every night just because of, the offense that they can produce. Now, Marcus Semien's getting older, and, so that's one thing to watch out for. Same with Corey Seager. They've got some older guys that can still produce, though. So that's one thing definitely to keep an eye on. But if they get a full season of healthy pitchers, this team's they're going to be in the playoffs regardless. But this team can make a serious run, deep into October.
Well, and you and I talked about it before the show, Mike bringing it up in the chat, saying that of the three teams we just talked about, the Astros, the Mariners, and the Rangers, the Astros do have the best odds according to Vegas to win the division, followed by the Rangers and then the Mariners. This is my pick to win the West. I like the Rangers a lot. They have what they have an embarrassment of riches on offense. Like the signing of Jock Peterson was one of those things where it's like it was kind of unnecessary, but why not?
I know.
But this is imagine this offense with Seattle's pitching staff. Would that be the best team in baseball if you combine the Texas offense and the Mariners pitching staff? I think we'd be on to something there. But at any rate, you called your shot with Seattle winning the division. I am going to call mine with the Rangers. I'm going to go with the Rangers to win the division, but I am not ready to give up on the Astros, and I think that it is going to be a Texas two-step all year. Those two are going to be battling back and forth, and any given day you check the standings, one or the other one will be leading that division, and Seattle will be close behind in third, but I can't buy into that offense, and you got to score some runs. So while the pitching is great, I just don't know if they have enough offensive juice. It means Seattle's going to be on the outside looking in, because if we think that the American League East is going to have three teams, is what we said on that preview episode, that means that you're not going to have that opportunity for multiple teams out of any other division. But I do think that it's going to come down to the Astros and the Rangers in this division.
We did say that.
Yeah, and that means that I am going to give the Rangers the nod to make it out of this division, just barely over the Astros. Like I said, I think that we're talking about like final week stuff, like end of September when this division will be decided.
See, you're a lot higher on the Astros than I am. I just think they lost too much. To me, it's Rangers and Mariners. Those are the two teams in this division. I think they have the most. And
I'm just going with the been there, done that type thing. The Astros,
I get it. Yeah.
They know how to do it. And while they've lost, quite a bit from the core, they haven't lost everything. You still got Jordan, you still got Altuve. Like if the Astros are in the middle for me in the rankings, is because I think, and it's not how you win the World Series or how you ultimately, win the championships or whatever, but it's like the Rangers have the offense, the Astros have the more balanced team, and the Mariners have the pitching. Like it's like you've got one extreme, the middle kind of version of that, and then another extreme. And I like the extremes of the Rangers offense to nudge out and beat the more balanced Astros team. But I don't know that matters in the playoffs. Like I think if the Rangers don't get the pitching figured out, prior to the playoffs, that might be the ultimate reason that they fall and slip out of the playoffs. But it'll definitely be the reason that their October ride is short if they don't have that figured out. And look, there's no way that I'm going to think that DeGrom's going to make it through a full season. But if he's healthy at the end of the season, you don't need much else. I mean, if Jacob DeGrom is the Jacob DeGrom of old, when they get to October, they won't need much more than two more guys on top of him. Then they can, roll through. But it's that's a tall ask to get Jacob DeGrom to October healthy, unless we're going to put him in bubble wrap right now.
Yeah, I got really excited talking about Seattle. Now I think about it. If they can get the offense going, and like I said, it's going to come down to, Jerry Dipoto is not going to sit on his hands. He can't do it. He can't help himself. If they can get the offense going, that team with that rotation is going to win the division.
Yeah, Scott's saying Seattle is going to have to trade for a hitter if they're going to contend, and it's true.
They will though.
I think their pitching is good enough to hang around and be in the conversation, but to truly be in that mix with the other two, they've got to get another bat.
But here's the thing too. But like,
I don't think you can get a bat though without trading from that strength of starting pitching. So it means somebody's got to go.
Castillo's going to be the one that goes.
Okay,
he's the one. He's the piece that's going to go.
But he brings back the least amount of value. Like, what bat do you get for Luis Castillo? Like, is it a difference-making bat for Seattle? Maybe the answer is yes. I mean, I don't think you're going to need for them. I don't think you're going to need you don't need a Mike Trout. You see what I'm saying? Because for them, if Randy Arozarena can be the Randy Arozarena that we know, and like I said, Julio Rodriguez, Jesus criminy, that dude's not going to suck like he has in the past year and a half. It's just not going to, I cannot believe that's going to happen. So if he even remotely can produce, you're already upgrading your center field right there. You see what I'm saying? So I think, the guys that haven't produced, if those guys produce, it's already an offensive upgrade for them. That's fair.
So that's where I'm like, you don't need to go out and get, a Kyle Tucker type bat, the one that's going to, go out there and, tear it up for you and carry your team. This team, if they can produce early on, and that's what we see from what we expect from Seattle, they're going to be okay. I just think, and then like I said, then you can go out and you can deal and bring in I'm trying to think of like an equivalent of, for example, an Austin Hayes type.
If I'm Seattle, I call up the Orioles. I think the Orioles could use another starting pitcher.
Well, and that's the thing. That was all along. Those two teams have been mentioned. Yeah.
If you can get one of the Orioles, prospect guys, a Colton Cowser or,
Kjerstad, Cowser.
Yeah, yes. Any of those guys, especially the ones that they've got sitting there in AAA that they can't find room for in Baltimore, don't have the playing time. I think you go do that. And
that's
it's not an established.
That should have happened over in December.
Sure.
That should have happened at the winter meetings. That deal should have already been done. And we should be talking about, the move that was already made and the way, and what we're looking at moving forward. Instead, now it is a question mark. But I will take Seattle's rotation over Texas's rotation all day.
No
offense-wise, I'll easily give you, Texas. And again, I love Texas. But
Scotty's saying that he thought that they were the team that should have won hard on Robert. It's not a bad idea either. I mean, personally, I'm not a Robert fan.
Neither am I. And what they would have had to give up, it wouldn't have been worth it, because you're talking about giving up. Logan Gilbert was a name that was banned. No, you ain't touching that. Brian Wu was another one. I've heard Emerson Hancock.
Not for Robert.
Yeah, we talked about it last episode. The White Sox want, a king's ransom for Luis Robert. He ain't worth it. He's another guy, he's the guy who hates baseball, in terms of the tiers.
Slightly less than Rendon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got Manfred, Rendon, and then you got Luis Robert. So I'm not going to give up that much, especially that from that pitching staff. Not a chance in hell I'm doing that for Luis Robert. Now, for Luis Castillo, like I said, going out and getting a Colton Cowser or Kobe Mayo, Heston Kjerstad, boom, like one of those guys, bring them in. That's young talent for that, for that outfield to move forward. Oh my God, go for it. And that's where I see Jerry Dipoto doing something. Again, he can't sit still. He just can't do it. He's like AJ Preller, man. Like they can't help themselves.
Yeah, those two do love making moves. So let's get your final AL West standings. Gun to your head. How do they line up?
I told you I got really excited on Seattle, so I'm going to stick with it. It's going to be like, okay, in my mind, because I like both teams a lot, I'm going to say like a game difference. because I like them that much. I'm going to go Mariners, Rangers, Astros, A's, and Angels.
And I will go, as I said before, with Texas at the top, battling it out with Houston for second place. Those two switching places all year, but I think Texas edges out Houston. Houston finishes somewhat comfortably over Seattle, and then they're all laughing at both the A's and the Angels, who I think will finish way far behind any of the top three. I think the top three will be the only ones that worth talking about for most of the year. But I do have them finishing Texas, Houston, Seattle.
I just think Houston lost too much. I really do.
Well, I mean, we will see shortly, and we'll find out. I mean,
we'll shove it on my hoop and win the division because why not? That's not what it is.
Well, and that's just, I just have this weird feeling about Houston. They're just not quite done. Like last year was, it was a step back from where we're used to seeing them, but I think they got
they still won.
Right, and they still
That's the crazy part, right. Yeah.
But I think they've got one more. They've got one last hurrah in them. I do. I think they've got just enough to the different division, maybe not. But this Western Division, I like their chances with the competition they're going to look at. But that is the AL West for 2025. Do want to talk about spring training and how things have been going, because today we got some fantastic announcements about injuries and the Braves. The hits just keep on coming. Picking up right where they left off, Sean Murphy is going to open the season on the injured list because he cracked his rib and is going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Fun stuff, since he tore cartilage in his rib cage so badly last year on opening day, straining his oblique, that he didn't play for 3 months. So this is an ominous sign for the start of the season then. And then reigning rookie of the year, Luis Gil in New York, was shut down from throwing and will be shut down for the next 6 weeks because he has a very major lat strain in his shoulder. So he will not be pitching. The Yankees did deal with this last year, though. Is about the same exact time that we learned that they would be without their ace to open up the year, and wasn't able to come back. Till June? Was it about June?
I want to say it was June. Mid to late June?
Yeah. I mean, there were no setbacks, and that was the first thing, because the first initial thing was, oh no, there's going to have to be surgery in New York. But it didn't end up being that. We'll have to see if that's what ends up happening with Gil. But not a good way to start what they hope to be is another World Series run. If you're looking at it from the rotation, you never want to lose a young guy who's coming off of winning the Cy Young like that either. So,
I know, yeah,
rough start for the Yankees.
That sucks, man.
I mean, the good news is they did bring in rotation depth. With Fried. and they have everybody's not a reliever, a starter, Marcus Stroman. So
there's your fifth starter right there.
Say Marcus Stroman's right. He is a starter.
Yeah, he called it all along.
Right. He knew what we didn't, and that was that there's going to be a spot in the rotation for him come hell or high water. Whether or not that last season remains to be seen, but any opportunity is a good one if you're looking at being either traded or cut in the case of Marcus Stroman. So not great news, but this is part of the opening to spring and the new year, is that you get guys coming in and injuries happen and they're part of the game. But I could have done without hearing about injuries before the actual games even start to count. So,
yeah, it sucks. Hopefully get him out of the way now, I guess.
I like this comparison by Scotty. Scotty's saying that. Is this thing though?
Nope, I think we might have lost Scott. me see if I can get it. Oh, well, okay. Since we did lose Scott, Scott, you had mentioned, unfortunately, I don't have the ability to pull the comment up, but you said Houston is to this year what Cleveland was to last year. That's a great comparison. It really is. I can see that. This is an interesting one, though. Like I said, with I just think with what we saw from Houston and what they've lost, I think that they are. I feel that window is closing much quicker than expected. That is, they didn't bring in enough, in my opinion. Like, had they brought in Bregman, okay, brought him back in, but losing Bregman, Kikuchi, Kyle Tucker away, and even Justin Verlander, because you know what you're going to get from Justin Verlander, but just losing those guys there and not having a I don't want to say quality backups because it's not. I don't want to blast them that much, but I think that they're in the position to where the losses I feel are going to be too great, and I'm with you. Like, they're different from Cleveland, though, in terms of what Cleveland just. I guess the way the organizations are run, and Scott, I see you're back now.
What great, fantastic timing! I'm like, this thing's not working. Oh, I just got booted.
Yeah, because you were sitting there and you were lagging a lot, and then it was just like poof, and I was like, oh, cool. And I can't bring it. I was like, so I couldn't bring up the comment. So if you want to bring up Scott's comment about Houston,
let's see if I can go do it now. All right, there we go. Scotty's saying that Houston is this year what Cleveland was last year.
I was just talking about it. So,
yeah, no, go ahead.
It's good. So yeah, I mean, I was just basically saying that like they are, but I think Cleveland is the way the organizations are run. Cleveland knows what they are, and they don't. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. They don't not overstep their bounds, but they don't overexert themselves in terms of like. It's hard. I know what I'm trying to say. It's hard to really like put it into perspective, but Cleveland stays in their lane is kind of a good way to put it for me. Like they know what they do and they know what they do best and they stick with that. Now with Houston, like I said, they lost some pretty big pieces. And I had mentioned it just before you came on, Scott, like, Kyle Tucker gone, Yusei Kikuchi gone, Justin Verlander gone, and then obviously Alex Bregman gone. That's 4 quality pieces to that lineup that were not replaced with that same level of player. Like, and I'm not saying you're not gonna replace a Bregman, completely. You're not gonna replace a Kyle Tucker completely. But when you have other pieces like that, the whole totality, the players they brought in, it's not gonna be enough to overcome that. So I do see that comparison that Scott had made with Houston, and Cleveland. I just think Cleveland is just much better run in terms of like what they know what they do best and they continue to roll with it.
That's kind of what we talked about with the Angels. Cleveland has an identity, and they run with it every year, and they're going to develop their pitchers. They're a contact heavy team. They're not necessarily looking for all the power hitters. Power hitters are great, but they want to put the ball in play, and that's who Cleveland is. And sometimes, like we mentioned in the preview, if it means they take a step back for the year to kind of get back to that place where they're more comfortable with that identity and getting the players that fit that, and that's kind of what happens. I think the comparison is good. Not when you're talking about like going down to like the nitty gritty of it, just in that like Cleveland had kind of felt like, maybe they're going to take a step back but they ended up winning the division because they got good comeback years from everybody. And I think that's kind of what Scott was alluding to with Houston is it's like, even though they lost those guys, everybody's kind of like, they might not be as good. I just think that what they have still there is going to be enough. Just enough in this division because really It comes down to battling with Texas. And because Texas doesn't have a complete team as far as the rotation being, top notch, level, to where you say, no, well, there's no doubt that they're going to win this division, or you feel really strong. It's like, I've got question marks about them too. Just enough that because I think Houston being more well-rounded helps them out a little bit. So, I mean, I don't think, though, that we're going to see the Houston Astros of old where they're just going to steamroll everybody. Like, that's what I think is gone. I think that this new Houston team is going to look a little bit more tame, a little bit more mortal when it comes to, long winning streaks and all that other stuff. But I do think that they'll still find their way because you can lose guys and it doesn't necessarily knock you all the way off the throne. So
no, but you're right. But to me, I'm looking at what they did last year, and I mean, again, they still won the division last year, but they didn't have an overly great season, and they lost a lot of those pieces. Maybe not a lot of those pieces, but they lost 4 pieces from that team. That I get what you're saying. I'm gonna slam the door shut, I think, on them, and they're knocking me down for a while. Like, this isn't like a situation where, oh god, well, the Astros are done now for the next 5 years. No, they still got guys. It's just a matter of, I just don't think in terms of winning a division or competing for a World Series is part of the equation for them right now.
I'll cap it off by saying this. If Altuve was gone, I'd feel different. But I think that he's that one last linchpin / link to the beginning of that whole
greatness.
War. Yeah. And so I'm going to say, as long as he is still there, that they are going to be able, they're going to be able to pick this thing up this year and look all right. Now, all bets are off. All bets are off going into next year. Like, we don't know how things will look, but I'm going to give them one last ride, is what we'll call it in Houston for this year.
There we go.
I feel like our thoughts are pretty much aligned on this division. It'll be interesting to see how. Now I have a vested interest on how things play out for Houston, but this division for me is one of those really fun ones because I don't hate any team in this division.
I don't either. Yeah,
to just completely observe that. I don't have any real rooting interest. Like, I don't care who wins this division. And the moves that have been made aren't money, but I never got the level of hatred that a lot of people did for the Astros over the cheating scandal and all that. I know a lot of people are still butthurt over it, and for whatever reason, it just did not faze me that much. Maybe it's because it happened against the Yankees a lot. So I don't know. But
fair enough.
But either way, like, I know that there are a lot of people who want the Astros to fail because of that, and have been like preying on this downfall, again, because of that, because they see this group and this core as just a bunch of cheaters and whatever. And not only are we far removed from that, again, I just don't think it was like that huge of a deal. Don't get me wrong, it was his cheating. They got caught and they paid their punishment. I just don't think it was as huge of a deal as some of the fans try to make it out to be, as if everything that they've ever done on the baseball field before and after that point is also in question. Like, I don't buy that for them. So
I don't either. I'm with you.
But it will be an interesting. Was there anything else that we needed to get to as far as news and notes? The injuries were the only thing that I had. Did you have anything?
Yeah. No, it's kind of nice. I mean, I'm sitting here watching the Reds game right now, and it's like, man, it's nice.
There's nothing better than being able to turn on baseball as background noise. It's the best.
Oh, I know. Like, I'm sitting there, and I know people, like, if you're watching this on YouTube, like, people see me keep continuing to like look over because I'm always watching, like, I have on like MLB Network or a game on every time we're doing the show, man. Like,
well, I would, but I don't have a TV in my office. So unfortunately,
I'm doing it in our room. So
I'll have to wait till the regular season gets closer to be able to do that. But that's gonna do it for us on another episode of the Backwards K Baseball Room. He has been Scott. I have been Chris, and yes, you heard that right. I screwed it up just like my internet screwed up. We run this thing like the A's run their franchise. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, the Impact Sports Cincinnati Network, as well as the Craft Brewed Sports Podcast and Network. We're everywhere and anywhere. We love talking baseball. We're moving to the National League next week. We are done with the AL. It's on to the senior circuit, the real league, where men play baseball.
Yes.
And they still do it without the use of the DH, as far as I'm concerned. This has been Backwards K. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you guys next week. Good night, everybody.